Welcome to Between the Shelves, the premier Sayville Library podcast. I am your host, Alex, and on this episode, I have brought in a very special guest, our director, Jenn Fowler. Welcome, Jenn.
Thank you, Alex. I'm so happy to be here today with you.
Thank you for coming. So we are discussing a little bit heavier topic today. It's been in the news. You may have heard of it, and it is the potential shuttering of the IMLS. This is a we'll get into what it is and what it does, and I hope to sort of enlighten people on how it will impact all libraries in the United States, and particularly Sayville Library. And there's no better person to discuss this with than Jenn. So thank you again for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So should we set the table? Do you want to discuss what IMLS stands for and what they do, or should we just talk about why we're talking about this?
I think we should start with explaining what IMLS is. It has been in the news, and obviously us being library workers, we hear it, the news that's happening, but even people outside of our immediate bubble are asking me questions about it, and I think you've had questions. Mm-hmm. So this is a really good opportunity for us to shine a light on what it is and what it means to us as a nation, and also us here right down to Sayville. So I'd like to start with a little bit of a short history of the IMLS. So the acronym stands for Institute of Museum and Library Services. It was established in 1996, and their mission is to advance, support, and empower America's museums, libraries, and related organizations. And this happens through grant making, research, and policy development. So some of the things that they focus on in their work are, a big one is access, resource sharing, conservation, and they also do perform analyses of the impacts of museums and libraries on Americans. They also are advocates for digital literacy and, again, access in specifically broadband access. So it is the largest source of federal funding for libraries in this nation. So I just want to say that one more time. IMLS has been the largest source of federal funding for libraries in this nation. And their grants help deliver essential services to individuals. And right now, they have a staff of about 70 employees who are able to enact all of the things that I just stated. And the reason that we're really talking about this today is because on March 14th, there was an executive order from the White House to essentially, I will quote, is the elimination of this government entity, along with some others on the same day that happened. So the elimination to the maximum extent consistent with applicable law, and such entities shall reduce their performance of their statutory functions and associated personnel to the minimum presence and function required by law. So that's a lot of words there, but essentially it is the dismantling of this institution. And that's what we're going to talk about and how that impacts us and libraries as a whole.
Yeah, so just a couple of notes on what Jenn just said. So the IMLS was officially formed in 1996, but it was actually, in 1996, it was actually a consolidation of existing departments that stretched back to the early 30s. So this funding has been there since much, much longer than 1996. It's not a new program by any means.
Right. It has been impacting generations of Americans, and it just in this specific entity started in 96. But you're correct. It's been for decades that people have been benefiting from this organization.
Yeah. And I just will also add that the IMLS was actually established by Congress. So it was formed by a congressional act. So it should only theoretically be able to be taken down by an act of Congress. So that's what, when they say that they're going to be taking it down to their only doing their statutory obligations, those obligations were established by Congress. So
right.
You can't eliminate the department entirely.
But you basically are taking their legs out from underneath them and to able to perform their duties.
So they're down to a skeleton staff at the moment. Right. And their current, or their former, I should say, deputy director was replaced.
Right. So obviously this is something that's quite serious, and it does impact us greatly. And there was immediate statements came out from the American Library Association, the New York Library Association, and their counterparts about how important this funding is for our patrons and for our children, which is great. There has been a huge push since this news broke of banding together library advocates and recruiting more library advocates to be more participants in the process of how money is distributed, not only federal money, but also state money, and how that works down to your community library. So the conversation has really broadened, and that's exciting because more people are kind of paying attention to the libraries and how much we do with so little. So in looking at, I'm sorry, I just want to see where I have a number for you to say that it's such a minuscule amount of money compared to the entire budget. It's like 0.003 of the federal government's budget impacts libraries directly. So it's such a small number in comparison to that, but it is able to affect like 6 billion people who use the libraries every year.
Yeah. So I do have some numbers on that. So the budget of IMLS, the last time it was approved by Congress, is $290 million budget, which again is 0.003% of the U.S. federal budget. And that money is just, we can talk about that. It's split up amongst all the libraries and museums in the United States. Mm-hmm. So should we talk about what New York specifically gets from IMLS?
Yes. So I did find my notes on that. I just want to correct. I had my number a little bit wrong. So libraries of all types translate to 0.003% of the federal budget in programs and services, but 1.2 billion in-person patron visits every year, and many more virtual visits, which are also significant in our country. So there's about 125,000 public school, academic, and special libraries in this country. And in New York, we have 7,000 libraries, 72 library systems, and also the New York State Library itself, who helps administer the money down to the counties and to the public libraries that are. So in New York State, we rely on about $8 million in federal funding to come to the state. And then that's distributed, that comes from the IMLS through grants to the states. It's called the Grants to States program. It's crucial because it supports these 7,000 libraries and library systems that we just mentioned. And also 55 of the New York State Library's staff, 55 positions out of their 84 are funded directly from federal dollars. So you're talking about immediate effect on the functionality of the New York State Library, because of this anticipated loss of funding will really undermine their services right at that level. So critical services are at stake, right? So we have to really try. What we really are trying to do is to ensure essential funding for local libraries. And what does that mean? What actually happens? Because we're throwing a lot of numbers, and I'm sure we're going to throw some more numbers at you. But every year, libraries like Sayville and our counterparts in Suffolk County, we apply for grants, and those grants help us to improve our building. We had a grant a few years ago that helped us complete our LED lighting project, and the libraries are aging rapidly through the state, and we rely significantly on those construction grant dollars. And right now, what we're asking for this year with the state budget, the state budget should be decided by April 1st. So we're doing this podcast just in time to talk about. We're asking for an additional $20 million in construction to bring it up to $54 million to help really keep our buildings safe, keep them accessible, and keep them modern and viable for the community. So the other part of it is the state aid, which focuses on just more generalities for libraries and how much that impacts all of us. Is the state is distributing about $104 million to libraries across the state, which sounds like a lot of money, but there's 7,000 libraries in the state. So all of this is we're all fighting for our little slice of the pie. But what makes libraries so different and amazing is how far we can go on just a little bit of money, So we always could use more, and we advocate. We travel to Albany. We have an advocacy day that's specifically for libraries, and we talk to our legislators and ask them to support the libraries and, advocate for us when the budget's being settled, so that we have a fair amount of money to keep our libraries going. But the New York State aid, as it is now, even with all the advocacy, is less than it was in 2009. So just think about that. So we're way, way behind in where we really should be, but yet we still continue to flourish and thrive and have so much activities in our libraries, which we can go into more. But did you have any questions about anything I just said?
No questions,
okay.
But I'll just underline what you said. I mean, I don't think any institution can stretch a dollar further than the public library systems, and New York does an outstanding job of it. Like you said, our budget has been, it was set by the state, and has continually been underfunded, adjusted for the Consumer Price Index. So right now, the 2026 proposed budget is $70 million short from what NYLA estimates that we need for operating budget. This was before IMLS anything. And then the construction aid is, they're proposing for it to be a slightly increased, but it's still $100 million short
of really where
it should be.
Right.
So, and then materials aid hasn't increased its rate since 2007. So,
right.
We're continuing to do more with less every year.
And that's its testament to the dedication of library workers across the nation, that we are, it's a calling to do this work, and we do not come into this work to become millionaires. We do it to help people. And it may seem like a really small number, $8 million, that New York State may be losing out now because of the IMLS shuttering, but that money has to come from somewhere. And it could come from another service that you use, the listener, that maybe is not use their public library, but it could come from another part. Everything, the money has to come from somewhere. Right. So it's, it gets a little complicated to think about the money from the federal government coming through the state, coming through the county, coming through your community. But it's just one piece of the bigger puzzle.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jen, but has Governor Hochul already said that they are not planning on backfilling the loss of funding from IMLS?
Yeah, I don't want to speak for Governor Hochul. So we still have a few more days and anything can happen before the budget is settled. Hopefully it'll be in favor of libraries. Libraries are usually a nonpartisan issue. Republicans and Democrats alike understand the value and generally support increase in library funding. It usually just comes down to the math. And I would dare to say that Governor Hochul, I would hope, is a library supporter. I know she has to make some really difficult decisions when you're putting a budget together. So that's why it's so important for us to amplify our voices to talking about this and being educated and able to have your little elevators when you run into a local legislator or you have the opportunity to speak with a New York State senator or assembly person. It's important to let them know what the library means to you. And I know that we have thousands and thousands of stories of people who use our library right here in Sayville over the generation that could come and do a testimony of how the library has changed their life. And that I can say, I know for sure.
So, I mean, you did say that, so New York only receives about a little over $8 million, right, from the federal funding, but that accounts for, I don't know if you have this exact number, but it's somewhere between 50 and 85% of the New York State Library's budget. I don't know the exact number of that. I've seen different figures, but
right. I don't have those in front of me, but I think that's about correct.
And the state library on that modest budget offers services that every library in New York, all 7,000 libraries, rely on. I'm talking about the electronic resources and databases, managing the competitive grants that go out to the libraries. They certify librarians.
They also are, support our summer reading programs, which are tremendously important. They administer Novel, which is the New York Electronic Virtual Library. They are very involved. The money helps with early literacy initiatives to ensure that every child has access to evidence-based learning opportunities, and also preservation of our heritage and our cultural institutions. And this goes a little beyond libraries into museums, and historical societies are also being impacted by what's happening right now. And we all know how important it is to preserve our documents and our history, our oral histories. All of this is stuff that New York State Library funding supports.
Yeah. And to, paint a more, real life example, the New York Botanical Gardens, we're not talking about libraries anymore, but that museum just received a few $100,000 for renovations last year from the IMLS. So if you've been to the New York Botanical Gardens, I mean, you can thank IMLS for...
You benefited from it. Yeah, and it's also, they think libraries and museums, you have a certain vision of that, but zoos actually fall under IMLS for, they get grants. So it's many things that we are utilizing as a collective community, free, I air quotes free, but, just access to all of these services and beyond. It's cultural, it's educational, it's environmental. There's so many things that the library has their hand in happily, but it's important to send the message that libraries matter. And if you are a library user, I implore you to put your name on one of the lists, or speak to somebody, pick up the phone and talk and say, hey, please keep us in mind. Please keep the libraries in mind when you're deciding your budget. Or the IMLS, it might seem almost too far away and too big for us to impact, but there are ways to, and I know Alex is going to share some links in the podcast notes of this episode. If you're interested in learning more about the IMLS or how you can support it, or you can support libraries in New York or in Suffolk County, I urge you to definitely check that out.
Should we try to paint a clearer picture of how this may actually affect Sayville Library users for our direct patrons?
Yeah, so...
Because we haven't even touched on the Suffolk Cooperative Library System and how they can be impacted. Right.
So over 800,000 Suffolk County residents use their library every year. So Sayville Library is part of a 56 library consortium that is headed by the Suffolk Cooperative Library System. And the system is essential for the networking and the resource sharing that we would never be able to offer services that we do unless we were part of a cooperative. So the most basic one that comes to mind, of course, is interlibrary loan, that they coordinate and facilitate items being borrowed from one library to another every day. The van goes to all 56 libraries across Suffolk County, bringing your materials and returning your materials. But we also resource share in many other ways, in pooling our money so that we can provide one of the best downloadable and e-listening, e-books and e-audiobooks library in the nation. It's up there as one of the best.
Yeah, Libby and Overdrive.
Libby and Overdrive.
And all of these
Hoopla.
Services.
All of these services are facilitated and guided by SELS, our system, helping us being able to afford it, and also our databases for research and ancestry, and et cetera, et cetera. It goes on and on. So in Suffolk County as a whole, we have last year, I think it was 6.6 million residents visited their library, 6.6 million times. And 1.5 million residents attended a program at their local library. So we know that libraries have become community centers. Sayville Library is no different. We've increased our programming exponentially. We've created new spaces for gathering and experiences, our technology, our makerspace. All of these services that we offer are similar to other libraries across us. So going back to the how the federal government supports our library is through the E-rate program. So we do receive some money each year from the E-rate program, which is funded through the Universal Service Fund. And it is a stable and hopefully a permanent form of federal funding. And we in New York get about $100 million for the E-rate program. And this enables New Yorkers to have access to high-speed broadband through their libraries and schools. And on Long Island, this funding out of that $100 million is up. We take about $35 million of that for this service. And without this kind of funding from the federal government, the libraries and schools would have two choices: not to offer internet access to local residents or require property taxes to increase by an additional $35 million in Suffolk County. So right there is a tremendous savings to the taxpayer. And it's not just an educational and economic development issue, it's also is critical for public safety issues, as our libraries and our schools do rely on these internet connections to contact local governments and fire districts and law enforcement at times of crises. So yeah, that's one of the things that it affects us directly, is having that E-rate funding.
Yeah, you can think about it, like you said, from a safety standpoint. This is how we get weather updates, whether or not we should close the library or a school. This is how, if our phone systems are now run off the internet. How do we call the police if there's a problem, or the fire department? So.
And we do know that the students in Sayville are very fortunate, and it's pretty standard now across the county, but they all have their computer Chromebooks. Everybody's got their Chromebooks, and we're able to supply them with the internet, and just working hand in hand with the schools. Again, another example of us collaborating and working together with other organizations or municipalities, depending on how you want to say it, helps us to keep our costs down. But it's so important. If it doesn't start at the top, the trickle down of the good will turn into, it's going to hit us, and we're going to feel it in ways that we are unexpected.
Yeah, I think, big picture, the thing to take away, I think, if you take away anything from this, is that libraries are able to stretch the dollars so far on everything that we do because we work in these consortiums, because Sayville Library works with the Suffolk County Library System. The Suffolk County Library System is part of the 70 other library systems that make up New York, which is all under the state library. So everything, we're all falling under the umbrella of another institution. And when those higher institutions, the state library and the cooperative library system for Suffolk County, they're the ones who get the direct funding.
Right.
And when that funding is cut off, that's when the services, you're going to feel the impact down the line. So
right.
Even
the services
though
can be affected, or your tax rate will be affected in order to maintain the services. And that's something we really work hard to keep reasonable. And that's exactly right how you described it.
Yeah. So if that's just, the broad strokes. If there's any takeaway you get from this, it's, just because Sayville Library doesn't get a check directly from the federal government, the people above us and the people above them do, and then it's going to come and hit us eventually. We don't know how exactly that will be because we have to see where everything lies in the end. But yeah.
But I feel, I'm a positive person, and I'm excited to hear how many people have signed up to become a library advocate. The number is increased over 200% over the last month of the New York Library Association collection of advocacy. People have signed up online, and just bringing awareness to libraries at this important, serious level is great. And we all should know more about where all of our money is going when we pay our tax bills. And I think that awareness is a good thing, and especially when it comes to understanding how libraries are funded and how important it is in general, even if we're not talking about our specific library, is the importance of libraries, especially public libraries across this nation. The literacy and the digital literacy components. We're raising a new generation who more than ever needs to have access, fair and equitable access across this country. So I'm happy to hear that the conversation is broadening and that people that normally don't talk to us about libraries are calling us and texting us and asking us, what's going on? What is this IMLS? And how is this going to affect me? Because, and it does. It affects all of us. So I hope that you will consider becoming an advocate.
Yeah. And again, I'll post some links in the show notes for this episode, or if it's easier for you, we recently put out a social media post on Instagram and Facebook that shared a link to the NYLA's, New York Library Association statement. And then there's a link there for a form to contact your representatives and express in a nice, concise way your feelings on the matter as well.
Yeah, and please come into the library and talk to us about it. We're happy to discuss these things with our patrons and provide resources to them to understand how this can impact just about anybody, from the visually impaired to a veteran to somebody who's looking for a job. I mean, it just goes across the gamut. So we are really a lot of balls in the air as a librarian, and the support from the community means everything to us. And we're really lucky here in this community that our library is supported and used, and I think loved by our community members. And we want to continue to keep growing and connecting with our community and providing new services and new experiences. And all of that comes together out across the nation, and it starts at the top. So I hope that we made sense and that it kind of cleared some things up, or if it raised more questions, that's fine. Just reach out and we will be happy to even do a follow-up if we need to on the podcast.
Absolutely. I think that's enough for today. Thank you, Jen, for taking the time to sit down with us and help work out some of this stuff. And I hope our listeners have a better understanding of what's going on right now and what the stakes are.
Yes. And thank you, Alex, for inviting me to talk about this important topic. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. All right. And listeners, we'll catch you next time between the shelves.
Bye.